All right guys, so on today's field tips, we're going to take a quick look at how to cut in self nocks on wood or cane arrow shafts. All right, so today I'm going to be working with Tonkin cane shafts. Now, the reason that I mention that is because there are some differences between wood and cane when it comes to nock orientation. And the big difference is that wood has growth rings as opposed to cane. And so when you cut in a self nock or place a plastic nock even on a wood shaft, you're going to want that nock oriented perpendicular to those growth rings. Now, there's going to be a couple of things that you need to cut in self nocks the way that I do. I cut them in with a hacksaw blade, just one hacksaw blade. So the cut that I make is pretty fine. And then I widen that out with sandpaper and a little carbide blade that I'll show you here in just a minute. So I've got my hacksaw blade. It's got fairly fine teeth. The next thing that you're going to need is some 100 grit sandpaper. And then the last thing that I use is this little carbide blade. And if you guys have watched my bow building videos where I'm cutting in string grooves on the actual bows, this is what I use to get started. Now this thing is a little over a 1/16 of an inch. It's less than an 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to use this to create a self nock that's kind of a snap-on nock. Now, if you don't have one of these or you can't find one of these, you can use a real small diameter rat tail file. That'll work just fine, just so long that it's less than the diameter of whatever string you're going to be using. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started on this self nock. Now, I want to mention something about the importance of nock alignment and nock fit. It's something when it comes to having arrows that are going to shoot consistently and have the proper dynamic spine and all shoot the same. Nock alignment is something that is extremely important, but it's oftentimes overlooked. Even just a little bit of misalignment in your nock can have huge impacts on your dynamic spine or how that arrow reacts when it comes off the bow, because you're really changing the angle of the orientation of that arrow to the string and to the bow itself. And so when you're doing this, or even when you're just gluing on plastic nocks, it really pays to be as accurate as you possibly can and really pay attention to that nock alignment. So to get started here, I'm going to lay my hacksaw on here and I'm going to get it lined up right in the dead center. Now, when I start this cut, I'm going to be going up at an angle, because with cane, if I went straight across, I'm going to actually break out part of this shaft on the back side. And so I want to saw up like this and then come back like this and cut those little strands off. If you've never worked with cane, that you might not understand what I'm talking about there, but as soon as you start cutting on a piece in line with the shaft, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And you don't want a real aggressive blade. And just take your time, make sure that thing is perfectly running right down the middle. Now the way that I am gauging the depth of this nock is I'm just using this little yellow mark, and so I'm gonna cut until the top of my shaft comes right to that little yellow mark there. And a lot of these strokes that I'm making are actually going the opposite way of the teeth, and so it's even less aggressive. So that's about it right there. And so I don't want to go any farther. So now I've got just a little narrow, probably a 1/16 of an inch cut in here. Now I'm just going to work with my sandpaper and start working it down in there and opening that up just a little bit. and you can turn your sandpaper so that you're kind of sanding on the edges a little bit. And I'm going to open it up just wide enough so that I can get the thin part. So you can see that this little carbide blade here is thick here, and it's real thin down here. And so I'm going to put this thin part down in there, all the way down to the very bottom. And now I'm just going to work it in there. Work it back and forth a little bit. Bring it back out. And now I'm going to put my sandpaper back in there. Continue sanding. Now if you need to, you can fold that sandpaper, maybe throw another piece in there to make it a little thicker. But how big you want to go, obviously, is going to depend on how big a string you're going to be running. But I'll also kind of round these top edges over so that it's kind of dished out a little bit in there. Makes it easier to knock. All right, so that looks pretty good. Now we just need to go ahead and wrap a little bit of thread or sinew around it, because we don't want this to split when we go ahead and put it on our bowstring. So we're gonna go ahead and do that, and then we'll do our final fitting to the bowstring after we've got that done. All right, so I'm just gonna use sinew because I've got it handy. But you can certainly use thread. Just put a little half hitch around it, and it doesn't take a lot. And I actually like to keep as little thread or sinew or whatever you're using back here as possible, because I really like to push the FOC up on my arrows. And believe it or not, just a little bit of extra weight back here will make a huge difference in your FOC. And so now that we've got that wrapped, we'll just let that dry, and we'll go ahead and fit it to the bowstring here next. All right, so our sinew's dry. Just gonna see how it fits. That actually fits pretty good, and you can hear, if you can hear that, it's snapping on there. Now the way that you test the knock fit is just point your bow down like that, give your string a little tap. Now if they're really tight, you might need to just sand it out a little bit, but if they're just a little bit tight, just put it on your bowstring and kind of knock it perpendicular or diagonal to the bowstring like that a couple of times, and just that rubbing will open it up a little bit, and it'll probably be all you need to do. But that's fitting pretty doggone good. All right, so this self knock is pretty much done. Now there's one last thing that I like to do, and that's just take a little bit of acrylic nail polish and paint on the insides of these nocks. And what that does is just help solidify things and keep it hard. And then also, if you do happen to get it to where it's a little bit too loose, you just paint on a couple of extra layers of this stuff, and it'll tighten that knock back up again. whatever your favorite color is. This happens to be, I don't know, it's been rolling around in the desk. It's all worn off. I stole this from my wife, so don't tell her. And you can also, if you're using all the same color fletchings, one of the things that I do is just take this nail polish and paint the outside of the, paint the side of the knock that's going to be your cock feather. So you won't get them mixed up. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for this episode. Now, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel because we're going to actually finish these arrows off. We're going to build some high FOC arrows with this cane shafting. And we're also going to work with some other woods. We'll do some spruce, and we're also going to build some carbon shafts. And also, click that little bell down at the bottom if you have the option to do that, because that's going to send you a direct notification when I upload a new video. Now, you should definitely go to the Patreon page and check that out, patreon.com/ClayHayes. I've got content over there that you're not going to see on YouTube. I'm working on a lot of exclusive bow building online course type material, and I'm uploading those videos to the Patreon site as I get them done. Now, some of the videos that we're going to be covering over there are how to make a two-piece takedown bow. We're going to talk about bow design. We're going to talk about tillering for different styles of shooting. Just a whole bunch of really cool bow building type stuff. We're also going to talk about arrows and strings and all that stuff. If you haven't already signed up for the mailing list, do that, because I send out a notification every time I do a blog post. I'm not going to spam you with a bunch of marketing crap, so you don't have to worry about that. But you will get good information on the blogs, and you'll get that sent right to you. So with that, hope to see you at the Patreon site, and we'll definitely see you next time.